This winter, I've got to be honest with you, it could be one of the wildest rides we've seen in years. I'm talking about a season where the atmosphere doesn't just play nice and predictable, but instead throws curveballs left and right. We're looking at polar vortex breakdowns, brutal Arctic blasts, snowstorms that could shut down entire cities, and maybe even severe weather outbreaks in the middle of winter. This isn't one of those quiet, boring winters we've had recently. This one has all the makings of a chaotic, high-stakes season across the United States. And to understand why, we need to start in the Pacific Ocean. That's where the story really begins. Out there, the water temperatures swing back and forth between patterns that control so much of our winter, El Niño, La Niña, or somewhere in between. What we call neutral. That dance is the El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO. And trust me, it's the heavyweight champion when it comes to steering our winter weather. When El Niño shows up, the Pacific warms. The southern jet stream kicks into gear, and storms hammer the south. Gulf Coast flooding, California storm trains, but up north, it tends to be milder, drier, and with fewer of those bone-chilling Arctic outbreaks. La Niña flips the script. Colder waters fire the jet stream north, and suddenly the northern tier is buried in snow, while the south stays warmer and drier. And then there's neutral. The wild card. Neutral doesn't lock us in. It opens the door for volatility, for swings, for the atmosphere to just do its thing. And guess what? That's exactly where we're heading this winter. No dominant El Niño. No full-strength La Niña. Just a neutral setup with the slightest lean toward La Niña. And that's where things get dangerous. Because neutral winters are the hardest to pin down, the most unpredictable, and often the most chaotic. The last time we had a setup like this, you might remember it. The winter of 2013 into 2014, that winter was legendary. Repeated Arctic blasts came surging out of Canada, locking the Midwest and Northeast into a frozen chokehold. Cities like Chicago and Detroit were buried under near-record snow. The polar vortex itself became a household name. Meanwhile, California suffered through a crushing drought, and the East Coast got blasted by storm after storm, nor'easter after nor'easter. And here's the kicker. That winter came right after a quiet hurricane season. Just like this year, no landfalls, a suppressed Atlantic season, blocked storm tracks. The parallels are eerie. I'm not saying history will repeat itself perfectly, but the echoes are loud enough to pay attention. So, what could this mean for the winter ahead? Let me paint the picture. I expect repeated Arctic fronts diving south, especially into the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Ohio Valley. These areas could see temperatures well below average, the kind of cold that bites through every layer of clothing. Brutal cold across the Dakotas, sweeping into Chicago, Pittsburgh, maybe even down toward Tennessee. At the same time, the West Coast and Florida, likely running warmer than average, even significantly so. Now let's talk snow and storms. Unlike 2013, when large parts of the plains were dry, this year I expect more action in the Midwest and Northeast. Multiple systems rolling through, setting the stage for big snowstorms, icy events, maybe even crippling nor'easters. If you live in Boston, New York, Philly, you're going to want to stay weather aware because the odds of multiple impactful storms are higher than we've seen in years. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Winter doesn't just mean snow, it can also mean tornadoes. That's right, severe weather in the heart of winter. Back in November of 2013, we had one of the most violent November tornado outbreaks on record, 73 tornadoes in a single day. And with this year looking so similar, I can't ignore the possibility that we see another outbreak of that scale. The lower Mississippi Valley, Dixie Alley, places like Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, even up into Tennessee and the Carolinas. These are zones I'll be watching very closely. So, to break it down, the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Ohio Valley are staring at a potentially brutal winter, repeated Arctic blasts, heavy snow, and lake effect events that could pile up fast. The East Coast is in play for more nor'easters than we've seen in years, with chances for heavy snow and ice storms. The West Coast and Florida likely stay on the warmer, drier side, though California drought concerns could return. And the South? Not just about warmth, but also about severe storms, with real potential for tornado outbreaks deep into the cold season. When will the first snow fly? Montana and the northern plains could already be seeing flakes by October. The Midwest and Northeast should be on high alert by November, and by December into January, that's when things really get cooking. When winter storms can reach deep into Texas, Oklahoma, even Kentucky. All right, guys, we have a massive update coming out of the Atlantic tonight. Tropical storm. Alda is no longer just some small system we're casually watching. This thing is brewing just off the east coast of Florida, and all signs are pointing toward it strengthening into a hurricane in the next couple of days. But here's the kicker. The track of this storm has shifted dramatically in just the last 48 hours. And let me tell you, when a track changes this quickly, it flips the entire forecast upside down. And that's not all. Later in this video, I'm also going to break down a dangerous heat wave that's about to set up across huge portions of the US. So we're talking hurricanes, flooding threats, heat extremes. It's all on the table this week. Let's dive right into it. First stop, the Atlantic Ocean. Right now, two massive tropical systems are spinning only a couple hundred miles apart. To the east, we've got Hurricane Alberto, a monster Category 4 storm churning just south of Bermuda. And just off to its west, sitting over the Bahamas, is its partner in crime, Tropical Storm Alda. Now, Alda might just be middle strength right now, but don't underestimate it. It's feeding off warm waters, pulling moisture north, and already throwing showers and storms into the Carolinas and Georgia. And here's where things start to get wild. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, Alda is going to intensify, but it's also going to be yanked around like a puppet on strings. Why? Because of the Fujiwara effect. This happens when two tropical systems get close enough to start dancing around each other. Alberto is the big dog here. It's stronger, more dominant, and it's actually going to pull Alda eastward, away from the US coastline. Now that doesn't mean the US gets off completely scot-free. Tonight and into tomorrow, Alda will creep close to Florida, only a couple hundred miles offshore. That's its closest approach. We're talking big waves, 10 to 15 feet along the Florida coastline, life-threatening rip currents. And yes, some showers, some outer bands, maybe even pockets of minor flooding. But compared to what we thought a couple days ago, this is a massive downgrade, and let's talk about that shift. Just 2 days ago, models were screaming at us about the possibility of catastrophic rainfall, 15 to 20 inches in some parts of the Carolinas. Now, most spots won't even get an inch. Florida will probably pick up the most, around 1 to 3 inches, but beyond that, this thing is mostly going to spin out in the Atlantic. It might brush Bermuda midweek, but the US is dodging a major bullet here. Now don't get me wrong, it's been a tricky forecast. The fact that Alda slowed down, developed later than expected, and then got caught up in Alberto's orbit, it all combined to shift the track dramatically. If it had moved just a little faster, we'd be having a completely different conversation right now. That's how razor-thin these margins can be when you're forecasting hurricanes. So, bottom line for Alda, minimal impacts in the US outside of beach erosion, dangerous rip currents, and maybe some localized showers. Florida beaches especially. If you're headed out there this week, be smart. Check the flags. Respect the ocean, because these rip currents will be no joke. But let's zoom out to the rest of the country, because Alda isn't the only weather story this week. A massive heat wave is on deck, and this one's going to torch the Midwest, the Plains, and parts of the South. Starting Thursday and Friday, temperatures will skyrocket 10 to 20 degrees above normal. We're talking 80s, 90s, and in some cases triple digits deep into October territory. Meanwhile, the Northeast actually gets a little relief. Some cool air dropping in, maybe even some freezes up north by the end of the week. And here's where it gets even more interesting. By the weekend, that strong high-pressure system settles in, and storm energy starts to build back over the Rockies. Translation: as we head into the first full week of October, severe weather season part 2 might be making a comeback. Tornadoes, hail, and maybe even the first real snow for some of you out west could all be on the table. So here's the forecast in plain English. Tropical storm Alda is going to strengthen, flirt with Florida, then spin away thanks to Alberto. Minimal US impacts, but Bermuda better be on alert. For the rest of us, it's heat in the middle, cool in the northeast, and storm potential building again by next week. This hurricane season is already throwing curveballs, and we're just getting started. As always, I'll be right here keeping you updated. So if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, because the second this forecast shifts again, I'll be the first to let you know.